This is the first universal Hindu temple in the Western world and is an iconic architectural landmark here in San Francisco. It was founded in 1900 by Swami Vivekananda, a disciple of the Indian sage Sri Ramakrishna. The architecture on the roof of the temple symbolizes the belief in Vedanta that the truth is one. As one Swami put it, the temple may be considered a combination of a Hindu temple, a Christian church, a Mohammedan mosque, a Hindu monastery, and an American residence. Today I will interview Swami Tattva Mayanda, the current minister of the Vedanta Society of Northern California. My research into the near-death experience has led me to Advaita Vedanta for the answers to some questions. Advaita Vedanta is a monistic philosophy that holds that the ultimate reality is to be found by yourself, in yourself, as yourself. Swami, could you tell us something about Vedanta for those of us who are not familiar with it?
Yeah, the Vedanta is a system of spiritual, philosophical life and ideas originally found in the Vedas. But Advaita Vedanta, which is the most popular version of Vedantic philosophy, was built into a compact philosophical spiritual system by Adi Shankaracharya, who lived from 778 AD to 810, only 32 years. Adi Shankaracharya was the one who expounded Advaita Vedanta as a compact and full-fledged philosophical system. So, in a few words, Vedanta is a kind of transcendental, spiritual, philosophical system with a deep emphasis on humanism. So it can be called a spiritual, universal humanism.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I wanted your input is because Vedanta has a particularly encompassing view of death. What is the Vedantic view of death?
Yeah. So, Vedanta believes that the ultimate definition or understanding of God is a divine principle that is transcendental, omnipresent, immanent, and present everywhere. Now, when we go through what you call the near-death experience, we are getting a glimpse into the transcendental, into the infinite dimension of our own personality. Suddenly, we are struck with the fact that death is not the end of the journey, death is not a full stop, death is only a transition point, it is a comma, not a full stop. And suddenly, we feel that we have a deathless dimension. So that vision of our own transcendental dimension gives us a broad perspective, and that helps us to look upon life in this world from a different perspective.
Right. Does this suggest that the brain does not produce consciousness?
No, brain is just an entity which is part of the human system. Consciousness goes far beyond, it transcends anything that body, mind, intellect or brain can conceive of. The consciousness is one all-pervading reality which is also present in everyone and everything. It is immanent and also omnipresent.
And Vedanta gives a way to access this?
Yeah, Vedanta helps you to realize the omnipresence of the one divine principle. So God as one divine consciousness, not as an anthropomorphic monotheistic God, a creator God, but God as a divine principle is present in everyone. So once we understand the spiritual dimension of our own personality, we are able to look upon the whole humanity, not only humanity, the whole creation as one spiritual family. So this feeling of spiritual oneness and unity is what makes Advaita Vedanta of Shankaracharya so unique and so humanistic.
So this Vedantic view of consciousness goes counter to what scientists has been promoting for so long, but I think science is beginning to come around to this. So what difficulties arise when Vedanta attempts to express this truth in a milieu which is somewhat hostile to it.
But instead of saying that Vedanta goes counter to modern science, I would say Vedanta goes beyond modern science. Because in modern science, we are limited in our access to the tools and instruments with which we explore and try to understand and interpret the world. So Vedanta transcends, doesn't go contrary to science, it goes beyond science. So that's what I would say. Vedanta transcends, it goes beyond the reach of modern science.
Right. I have heard that in a Vedantic view, consciousness does not appear in the universe, rather the universe appears in consciousness. Can you give us some insight about what this is? What this means?
Could you explain?
Yeah, consciousness does not appear in the universe appears in consciousness.
In fact, the consciousness reflects through the universe. The entire universe, even our own mind, is a reflecting medium through which consciousness manifests. So, when our mind, our thoughts, our ideas, our impressions, what we call in Sanskrit vasanas, vrittis and samskaras, are pure, then this Vedantic divine principle, it manifests in its pure effulgence, complete effulgence. That's why Vivekananda has got a very famous quotation. He says, the difference between an amoeba and a Buddha is one of degrees and not of kind. The difference between an amoeba and a Buddha is a difference of degrees, not difference in kind. Because in an amoeba, the same divine principle manifests in a very crude, limited form. Buddha is actually the Sanskrit word for the enlightened. In an enlightened person, in a spiritually elevated person, this divine principle manifests in its full effulgence. So why this difference in the manifestation? When our mind is pure, when we do good deeds, when we speak good words, when we love our fellow human beings, when we look upon the whole humanity or the whole creation with compassion and love, and when we do our activities, when we do our duty without any selfish motive, when we practice unselfishness, then this inherent divinity present in all of us begins to unfold and manifest with greater and greater effulgence. So when people become selfish and cruel, what happens? Their mind, the reflecting medium through which the Atman, the consciousness reflects, becomes filthy and dirt. Prayer, meditation, good actions, practice of unselfishness are so many attempts to clear up the dust of our mind. Our mind becomes more and more pure as we practice more and more love and compassion and unselfishness. Then the immanent Atman, the divine reality present in all of us, begins to manifest in all purity and effulgence.
What you're saying is that any unselfish act can lead to awakening?
Any unselfish act, any unselfish deed, any good word, any thought, noble, compassionate thought, can clean our mind, can purify our mind, our thoughts, our emotions. And as our emotions and feelings become more and more pure, the infinite, the immanent, the inherent inner reality, the divine consciousness, begins to unfold and manifest with greater and greater effulgence. Such people we call mystics, maybe Saint Teresa Favila, the Buddha, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Shankaracharya. You find such great men and women in all traditions. See, in that respect, spirituality goes beyond conventional definitions of religion. Spirituality is universal. Spirituality is possible even without believing in a created God. Buddha was one of the greatest spiritual men in the world who did not believe in a monotheistic God. So, you find many eminent men and women, people who practiced unselfishness, purity, and dedication and compassion towards their fellow beings. They are spiritual. They may not be religious in the conventional definition of the word religion.
Swami, I think you're very familiar with the near-death experience. So, what is your feeling about the near-death experience as it relates to Vedanta?
Yeah, near-death experience for a person who has led a pure life will give an access to the transcendental dimension of his own personality or her own personality. Because suddenly we are struck by the fact that we are not just these physical bodies and mind. The body comes to an end when we die. The mind is no more when we die. So when near-death experience happens, suddenly we are struck by this startling fact that we are something much more than this physical body. We are something much more than what we thought we are. So that gives you an access to an infinite dimension, infinite and transcendental dimension of our own real nature. This could happen in many different ways, maybe not always in a spiritual way. So I can perhaps give the example of Dostoevsky, one of the greatest creative writers the Western world has ever produced, if not the greatest the creative writer the Western world has ever produced. Especially if you look upon Dostoevsky and his contribution to his deep penetration to the human psyche. No other creative writer in Western literary tradition has ever done it. The only comparison I can think of is the character of Karna in the Mahabharata. You find many such interesting incidents. So Dostoevsky was sentenced to death. He was a rebel. He was about to be killed by the Romanos. So what happened by the firing squad? Suddenly a messenger came and he was pardoned and he got a new life. So he must have had some kind of an idea of a real experience of the limitation of his own physical body. And suddenly that access, he was not ready for it. He was not a yogi who goes through this kind of transcendental experience. He was not ready for it. He was not a spiritual man in any sense yet at that time. But that experience gave him an access to the endless resource, to the transcendental dimension of his own personality. And that perhaps helped him to unfold his potential skills to penetrate the human mind. So when you are suddenly linked to something transcendental, suddenly you realize that you are a big billionaire. A man who thought he has only a few thousands of dollars suddenly realizes he is a billionaire. It's like that. In near-death experience, suddenly you get access to your own transphysical, infinite, transcendental spiritual personality. And that helps you to look upon the whole world from a different perspective if you are a yogi. If you go through this experience as a yogi, then you return as a spiritual person, as a mystic. But if you are not ready, then you may return from near-death experience as a person with a different view, different outlook on life. You become more compassionate, and that may be the beginning of your spiritual evolution. Near-death experience helps you to go beyond your own body for a short time, but that also gives you a glimpse into your own transcendental dimension.
I'd like to quote something from the Katha Upanishad.
Yeah.
It says, if a man failed to attain Brahman before he cast off his body, he must again put on a body in the world of created things.
Yeah.
I'd like to know, what is the world of created things, and why does reincarnation exist?
Yeah, Vedanta cannot be properly understood without an understanding of the concept of rebirth and reincarnation and law of karma. So Vedanta believes, and that's true of yoga and also Buddhism, that whatever we do in this life, action doesn't mean physical deed. A word we speak, a thought we think, all can be called actions. So it leaves a residual effect even after the action is over. It's called vritti in yoga, and that becomes a samskara, a tendency that is accumulated in our mental system, and that tendency will remain there. So actually our subtle personality, our real personality, so to speak, that is not our body, that real personality is a combination of innumerable, endless samskaras and vasanas and tendencies and impressions we have accumulated through innumerable life cycles in the past. So, according to our actions and tendencies, we are reborn again. So when we are reborn with a bundle of our own accumulated samskaras. Samskaras means vrittis, tendencies, impressions, and aptitudes and attitudes and emotions. So accordingly we act. So long as we believe we are these bodies, our mind or intellect, so long as we do not realize our transcendental spiritual dimension, we are bound to continue moving through these endless cycles of life, death and rebirth. It goes on. The moment we realize that we are something much more than the physical body, that is called liberation. At that, nirvana in Buddhist tradition, the moment we realize that we are something much more than this physical body, at that time, these samskaras come to an end and we become one with the infinite. This is what Vedanta tells. It's called mukti or moksha, or the individual soul realizing its identity with the universal soul. At that time, the cycle of rebirth comes to an end. Till then, we go on doing different actions, accumulating impressions accordingly, and then coming back to this world when we are reborn with this bundle of tendencies, and according to those tendencies we continue our actions and we accumulate fresh samskaras, fresh impressions, and this endless life cycle continues. This is like a weed. A weed has no beginning, no end. It goes on rotating. But the moment we realize through spiritual practices, through unselfish deeds, through the practice of compassion and love and broad-mindedness to other living beings, then we come out of this. It's called liberation or moksha.
Right. What is the light that people experience in a near-death experience?
That light is a glimpse of our own Atman, Jivatman. That Jivatman is born again. Jivatman is individual soul. It is born again. Individual soul is born again according to the impressions and tendencies we have accumulated in this life. I can give an example. In the Kathopanishad there is a verse in Sanskrit. Atmanam radhinam vidhi shariram radhamevaja buddhim tu saradhim vidhi mana pragrahamevaja. So it means Atmanam radhinam vidhi. So the human life is compared to a journey in a chariot, a great chariot imagery. So we are traveling in a chariot. So we are the traveler, and our intellect is the driver of the chariot, and our mind is the reins with which the driver controls the horses. The horses are senses of perception, senses of action, eyes, ears, etc. And we have to travel through this road. This road is the world of senses, sense experiences. So unless we are able to control the horses properly, discipline the horses properly, we won't be able to reach our destination. So once we realize that we should control our senses and mind should be under our control. We should not be controlled by the senses. Unless we realize this, our journey will not come to an end. So Vedanta tells you, once we are able to control the senses and thereby feed the mind with good spiritual food, mind becomes pure, and then the mind realizes that it is just a changeable entity, it has got something much bigger. So death can be a great teacher, death can be a great guide. Death is somebody is a teacher that takes an unwilling student to a place where the student realizes that he has much more in him. The teacher is able to reveal to the student his own inner potential. So death can be looked upon as a great teacher. And in near-death experience, that death becomes a teacher. That death helps the person to realize his own spiritual dimension. But it may not always have a lasting effect unless the person tries to practice certain spiritual values. Very often it happens, near-death experiences have changed human life. Suddenly when they realize, oh, I was working for money and wealth and status, fighting and quarreling, practically doing all sorts of things just to make a little more money, just to live a happy life in this world. That person suddenly realizes, well, I won't take this money back. I won't take my checkbook with me when I die. I have to leave the checkbook behind. I have to leave all the wealth I have made behind. I don't have these friends and admirers with me when I die. So suddenly the person realizes that he is one single lonely traveler in his own spiritual life. So that helps him to identify with something transcendental. So death can be a very compassionate teacher who teaches the student, the person who goes through this near-death experience, certain lessons on his own spiritual life.
Right. Many people who have a near-death experience feel that they have returned home and that they would like to stay there. So my question is, how can we remember home or where we came from before we die? What must we do?
Well, our deathless dimension is our real home.
The deathless dimension is a real home?
We have a deathless dimension, this transcendental dimension. So, death in Vedanta is not the end of the journey. Death is a transition point because Vedanta believes that we be born again. Life is not just one chance if you believe in law of karma. So, a person who experiences near-death experience suddenly realizes that all that I cared for till now really are of no value. Suddenly he is forced to experience a feeling of left behind by what he thought to be the most precious things in his own life. A person may work hard all his life or her life to make money and wealth and status, be happy about it, and getting frustrated, getting depressed, and sometimes be happy also. So all these changing, this passing phenomena of sufferings and enjoyment coming one after another, like two sides of the same coin, it makes you tired, it gives you fatigue. So in near-death experience, suddenly you come to a state, a plane of experience where you feel, well, all these things are of no value. There is a state, that's my real place, that's my real home, where all these problems are totally irrelevant or absent. So all my struggles to make money, struggling this life of competition and endless efforts and going through pains and sufferings and occasional happy experiences also, all these are totally irrelevant. All these do not exist when I leave behind all this in death. So there is such a state where these things do not exist at all. So this worry, this anxiety absolutely are all changing experience. They have no real permanent existence. So that feeling of going beyond this duality of pain and pleasure, enjoyments and sufferings, that is left behind, that gives you a feeling of inner serenity and peace. And that inner serenity and peace continues if the person who experiences near-death experience he continues his pursuit of this higher transcendental experience. One thing, you feel a freedom from duality. You feel there is nobody whom you have to compete with. You feel there is nobody whom you hate or you particularly attach to. So you go beyond all this obsessive attachment to certain things and obsessive hatred of certain things. Mind is suddenly in a state of perfect restfulness. That restfulness is unique because it gives you a feeling of inner serenity, peace. The inner peace, you want to connect, you want to experience the inner peace again and again. Because everyone in this world is looking for peace. Every effort is an attempt to get peace and inner serenity. Even enjoyment is only for peace. So suddenly you get this enjoyment of inner peace in near-death experience. So you are left behind as a perpetual you are in a state of perpetual quest for this inner peace even after near-death experience is over.
I remember that the Buddha once said that there's deliverance from the born because there is the unborn. What is your understanding of the unborn?
The unborn is is the Buddhist language for Atman. Ajam. In fact, Vedanta defines Atman as the birthless and deathless. Because in Vedanta, the absolute reality is approached through three different approaches. The absolute reality which is birthless, deathless, which doesn't change, which is beyond time, space and causation, which we experience as one unchanging reality. It is birthless because it never died, it never ceased to exist. It is deathless because it never ceases to exist. So it is beyond time, space and causation. It is beyond past, present and future. So that is the absolute reality. It is called Paramarthika Satta in Vedanta, and it is called Satyantu Paramartha. Nagarjuna calls it Paramartha Satta, which is called Shunya in the Buddhist metaphysical system of Nagarjuna, called Shunyavada, the doctrine of emptiness. So it is the transcendental reality, the absolute reality. Below that there is the changing reality, which is called the empirical reality, the phenomenal reality. The world, these chairs, this hall, or the public address system, all these belong to the empirical reality. They are not absolutely unreal, but they are not absolutely real. Because to be called absolutely real, they should exist without any change for all times. So this chair did not exist before it was built, and it may not exist after a few hundreds of years. So these are changing realities which are called Vyavaharika Satta. That is the language which Nagarjuna also uses. It's called Samvriddhi Satyam, as Buddhists calls it. At the third level, below this, there is a conceptual reality. Something that exists in your mind but doesn't exist here. You may mistake a rope for a snake. Snake is not there, only piece of rope is lying in front of you. The snake is in the zoo. That memory you superimpose on the rope in front of you. So, in Buddhist tradition, this birthless, deathless, the indescribable, the inexplicable, the absolute reality which is beyond verbalization, which is beyond definition and description, which can only be experienced as nirvana in Buddhist tradition. In Vedanta tradition we call, it is called aparokshanubhuti, the inner experience of the transcendental reality, the unity of the individual and the universal reality. So that absolute reality is one all-pervading and immanent reality. It is present in all of us, it's called immanent. It is all-pervading, it's called omnipresent, it is transcendental. And in fact, Buddhism is nothing but a more humanistic interpretation of Advaita Vedanta. Buddha gave a humanistic, a much more practical interpretation of the Upanishadic philosophy or Vedanta philosophy. Shankaracharya gave a more metaphysical and philosophical approach. That's all.
Often before you give lectures, there's a chant, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from death to immortality. Could you expand a bit more about the difference between the unreal and the real?
Yeah. Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Murtyurma Amrutam Gamaya. This is it. Now, this is the chant. So, from non-existence to existence, from darkness to light, from death to deathlessness. Amrita means deathlessness, a state of deathlessness. Deathlessness is our natural state. Death is our imposition. Death is our own creation. So once we realize our own deathless dimension, our own infinite dimension, our own transcendental dimension, in fact that's what is happening in near-death experience without our preparation. In near-death experience, you know what happens? You are experiencing your own deathless dimension without preparation. When you prepare for that deathless dimension, it is called samadhi. When you practice meditation, prayer, japa, in any tradition, no matter what religion you belong to, and I tell you, it's possible also for genuine spiritual seekers without the aid or help of an established conventional religion. Buddha is the greatest example for that. So you find, once you realize your own deathless dimension, your own infinite spiritual dimension, after making proper preparation, then that experience lasts. It is called samadhi. But in near-death experience, sometimes, people suddenly, without, an atheist also had this experience, you said. Maybe that atheist must have experienced that, must have done a lot of spiritual practices in his previous life. At some point, you suddenly connect with your own accumulated impressions that are accumulated in the mental system. If you want, I can narrate a story from a near-death experience of one person in Bhagavata Purana. It is called Ajamila Vakhyana. Ajamila was a young man. As a child, he was brought up by his parents with paper. As a God-fearing boy, he was given all lessons and he was an ideal son, actually. But during his youth, he deviated from the path of dharma and he started leading a wayward life, indisciplined life, and he actually quarreled with his parents. He ill-treated his parents. He became a scourge to the society around him. So it was some kind of a degradation for this boy who was born in a good family, who was brought up as a God-fearing, as an ideal son. But towards the end of his end of his life, there was a sudden change. Because of his deviation from the path of dharma, he ill-treated his parents, he became a problem for his own community, all people deserted him, and he was coming to the end of his life. But he had a son. His son's name was Narayana. Now Narayana is a synonym for Vishnu in Hindu tradition. Narayanam Ayanam Yasya means it is the ultimate destination, spiritual destination of all spiritual seekers, Narayana. That's a name. It's a name of a synonym of Vishnu. So this man had named his son after Narayana. So his son's name was Narayana. So when he was lying dead, he was about to breathe his last, coming to the end of his life. He was fatigued, tired and exhausted. Everyone had deserted him, no one near him, no one to help him. When he was about to come to the end of his life, suddenly out of thoughtless desperation, he called his son to come to his aid. The son's name was Narayana. But that was also the name, the holy name that he was practicing when he was a little boy, when he was brought up by his son, by his parents as an ideal son. He used to get up in the morning, he used to chant his name of Narayana with great reverence and devotion. that memory also came to his mind. So you can see two memories coming, one with coming in conflict. The memory of his own son. He called his son. He was totally helpless. So he called his son, maybe he was asking for water. And when he uttered his son's name, he also remembered that was also the holy name he was practicing. He was doing japa, repeating the holy name as a child. So suddenly his mind went to God, Vishnu's. So the story goes that Vishnu sent his servants to take him to Vishnu's loka, the holy abode of Lord Vishnu. That's the story. The point is, he was liberated. Though he had led a very indisciplined life when he was young, and he had a deviation from the path of dharma, still he was liberated, because at the last moment, his memories went back to the early days when he was practicing spiritual discipline, doing japa, taking the holy name of Narayana. So he passed away with that name. So in Vedanta, there is a statement, the highest accomplishment, highest attainment in your life is when you leave this world with the holy name of God in your lips and the holy thought in your mind. That's the highest achievement. So this could happen by the sudden remembrance of previous experiences. Previous experiences also can come from previous life cycles also. So that's why in the Ishavasya Upanishad, a dying man's prayer. What is a dying man's prayer? Oh mind, think of all the good deeds you have done in your life. Oh mind, oh my mind, think of all the good deeds I have done in my life. Think of all the good words I have spoken in my life. Think of all the noble things I have done, so that I can have a better life hereafter.
You said that this man had a memory of something from a past life.
Yeah.
Where are these memories stored?
Memory stored in Chittam, mental system. You can find that you find certain patients suffering from phobia or depression or maybe different forms of schizophrenia. You find some of the problems can be traced to previous experiences of this life. But there are many patients who show symptoms of illnesses which cannot be traced to experiences in this life. Mm-hmm. So where do they come from? If you extend the same logic beyond this life, you have to admit that these influences, hidden memories, come from another source. It can be the previous life cycles.
Yeah, but surely they're not stored in the brain, so maybe we'll have to come up with a word that's not for brain, that's something kind of transcendental that transcends matter. So just for clarification, where are these memories and tendencies stored if they're not stored in the physical world?
They're stored up in the mental system. Mental system, again we are trying to find out a mechanism with the help of tools available to modern science. So we have to admit that modern science has not come to the end of human knowledge and human wisdom. You see, if somebody had predicted, let's say 70, maybe 100 years back, if somebody had predicted you can talk to another person living 10,000 miles away, you can see his face, they would have called you crazy. 100 years back, if you have predicted man will be flying to moon, will be going to outer space, you can sit in ICBM, intercontinental transcendental ballistic missile across thousands of miles, people would have called you mad. But today it just became a reality. So how can we say that there is no chance for science to come up with an explanation for many things that we do not know today? Mm-hmm. So a genuine scientist will not tell you that science has come to an end. Anything which is not accessible to modern science has no existence. A genuine scientist will say there is a possibility the science can go further and may explain many things which still remain unexplained.
Swami, you've explained many things extremely well, and you've added some clarity to my own understanding. But in my research, I've come across people who have out-of-body experiences. They're able to leave their body and see themselves and go to distant places and to accurately report what's happening there. How does Vedanta understand this? Or is this possible in Vedanta?
In Vedantic tradition, there were many mystics and yogis who have developed these skills. I'm not one of them.
No.
So I can only say a few things from some scriptures. Mystics and yogis who have developed these skills. Well, may I tell you something interesting? Our present concept of time, movement, actions are all related to what we have in this earth.
What we have what?
This earth.
Yes.
This earth, in fact, our concept of time also is defined by the distance from sun to the earth. So, we are not sure completely, we are not certain that there are no living beings in other planets which may be farther away from the sun than us or maybe closer to the sun. So, if there are living beings in other planets, in other galaxies, their life, their skills, their potential will be totally different, much bigger, much higher, much more sophisticated than what we have today. So, you find in Hindu mythological books sages suddenly appearing from nowhere, traveling at mind-boggling speed, manifesting in visible form at will. You find many such stories. Well, I have no clear proof to say yes or no, either to accept it or contradict it, but I say there are still many possibilities before science. So science may one day it may take long time, science will have to develop much more sophisticated tools to explore those areas.
I've interviewed some people who claim to be mediums. They claim to be able to contact the dead. Does this have any relevance?
I have no idea, in fact. I read Edgar Casey's books, I read about medium, but I have nothing to say about it because I read them. I neither believe nor disbelieve. To disbelieve will be a kind of intellectual arrogance. To believe again will be I cannot believe because I don't know anything about it. But the spiritual experiences of people who have done a lot of spiritual practices like meditation, they do develop certain skills, but they never parade these skills. They never use these skills for commercial purposes, and they don't go about giving undue publicity to their spiritual things, because Vedanta tells you should never give too much importance to any of these skills. Those who give too much importance to these skills will not be able to reach the highest level of spiritual unfoldment. In order to reach the higher or the highest spiritual goal, you should give up your pursuit of these skills or your attraction for these skills.
In researching Vedanta, I've discovered that there are several ways, if I can put it that way, to connect with the transcendent. There is silence, there is Om, there is Thou art that, and then there are the 108 Upanishads. And I understand one of the best ways to connect with the transcendence is silence.
Is
one of the best ways, one of the most efficient ways of connecting with the transcendent is silence.
Through silence this is possible. But before practicing silence, we need to go through certain other disciplines. So if you make your mind, if you practice silence, you, in a way, you are turning your attention inward. So, those who do practice silence, those who practice meditation, without proper preliminary training, will face a lot of conflicts. Because the moment you start practicing silence and meditation, all the accumulated thoughts, ideas and impressions and tendencies will suddenly come to the surface of the mind. It's just like take a long pole, a stick, and stare a lake which has many layers of dust and filth underneath. So when you practice meditation or silence, there is always the possibility that many unwelcome thought currents will come to the surface of the mind. Conflicts, ideas. So people sometimes get hallucinations and delusions because they suddenly misinterpret these hallucinations as real experiences. So that's a great problem. Patanjali also it gives strong warning against this in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, So he called Bhranti Darsana, means false experiences.
So one might actually think that one has attained the transcendent when they have actually not?
Yeah, it could happen. Oh, certainly. It does happen to many people. So there is one way to test. If a person has got that transcendental experience, and if he is serene, calm, and is not excited, and if he is compassionate, if he is broad-minded, then that experiences can be genuine to some extent. But a person suddenly becomes over-enthusiastic and suddenly wants to reform the world, suddenly wants to come out and bring about a change in other people's life, a kind of prophet syndrome as you call it. That is a clear proof that it is not genuine. Because real experience makes you dive deeper into your own self. And that experience manifests in the form of serenity, calm, quietness. And also you are not in a hurry to reform the world. So that's one way of testing whether the experience is real, genuine or not. Too much of commercial exploitation, too much of parading, too much of showmanship is a clear proof that it is not genuine. Okay, so that is one important point to remember. Real experience will help you, will make you more contemplative. And also you are tapping into your own inner potential, spiritual potential. Once you connect with your own hidden inner potential, then you won't be in a hurry to bring about a change in this world, because the world has produced many great teachers, all the way from Buddha to Christ and many, or Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, many great men have come to this world. The world remains the same more or less. Of course, many people are benefited, many deserving spiritual seekers are benefited. So this spiritual common sense, this unique feeling of spiritual common sense, it is one important mark of a genuinely advanced person.
What one question could one ask that would answer all other possible questions? What one question could one ask that would answer all other questions?
How do you define yourself? Who are you according to you? Am I the physical body alone? Am I this mind? Am I the intellect? So, even if you have an intellectual understanding of your transcendental dimension, though you have not experienced it, you may not have experienced your own transcendental spiritual dimension, but if you have a genuine interest in this higher philosophy, then that will tell you that you have your own understanding as to what you are. You may not have experienced your transcendental dimension, but you are convinced that there is such a thing. So that's one question we can ask. With that answer will reveal the person's own spiritual evolution.
Swami, I'd like to thank you for this interview. Is there one last thing you'd like to offer the audience who is interested in the near-death experience and the transcendent.
Yeah.
What would that be?
So, our whole life is a preparation for leaving this world and this body with a smile on our face, without any bitter thought in the mind. So, our death in a way reveals our life. If we can look upon life itself as a spiritual journey, then how we die is immaterial. Because death is not the end of the journey. Death actually reveals the deathless dimension of what we are. Because death implies the end of the physical body. And the last boon that one young boy in Kathopanishad asked to his teacher Yama was, many people say after death there is nothing left behind. And some people say there is something that continues to exist. So please answer this question. Yeyam prede vijigitsa manushi asti tige nayam asti dijayage edad vidya manusishtastoyaham varana mesha varastudiyaka. It comes in Kathopanishad. The answer to this question from Yama was this. Anoraniyan makoto mahiyan atmasijanto nikhitam guhayam tamakrudu pasyati vedashokaha dhadu prasadat mahimanam atmanaka. Yama said, in the minutest of the minute and in the largest of the largest, there is one Atman, divine reality present, is immanent. Through spiritual practices, through meditation, through prayer, or through good actions, through the practice of compassion and humanism, we can bring out and manifest this inherent inner divinity. That should be the goal of human life.
Swami, thank you so much.
Thank you.